All right, welcome back. This is the Gig 'em 247 podcast. We haven't done one of these in a while, but I am here with the Eagles' Richard Croome, who is an expert on Aggie baseball. We're going to talk a little about the NCAA tournament, kind of what we saw in the announcements, and a little bit about the Aggies in the regional this weekend. So I guess just first off, any impressions of the overall tournament? Anything kind of stand out, surprising?
Surprising? No. I guess one thing that stands out is that Texas didn't make it. That's not really surprising to me because I didn't think they deserved to make it, but everyone always, says the name Texas will get you in. But
yeah, I was one of those people. Until all 64 teams were announced, I fully expected Texas to be in it.
Well, actually, we had 61 because the last regional was Baylor, so we knew they weren't going to be in theirs. But I don't know. I guess a couple surprises. I think that Baylor does have a fairly easy regional compared to some of the teams. I believe, and I think that's. That's one of those travel things, that the NCAA likes to try and do probably. And they deserve, they're a top team, so they deserve a little bit of a break, I guess. There was...
What do you think of a team like Missouri getting like a 4 seed?
Yeah, I was just going to say, there was, when Missouri's your 4 seed, and they went to Arizona, that's got to be, you almost got to put that as the toughest regional right there. Florida State's regional is really tough.
Clemson and South Carolina in the same one.
Yeah, and the same one is interesting. I don't know if that's a really tough regional, but I thought Florida State's was, I can't even remember the teams now, but I remember when it was announced, I thought to myself, Florida State's got it tough again. In fact, their coach said all 3 teams that are coming were conference champions.
What do you think about Kentucky not getting a host site as opposed to Miami, who did? And I guess they kind of made up for it by sending Kentucky to Purdue's regional. But what are your thoughts on the Wildcats not getting one despite their record this year?
Yeah, I thought they should have got one. And it's kind of like, is it Miami or would it even have been Purdue that maybe they should have taken the place? Purdue doesn't even have a stadium right now, so I would think Kentucky would. Everyone talks about the SEC being the top baseball conference or top a lot of conference in a lot of sports, and they only got 3 regionals really out of the SEC. Whereas I think
I think it was 3.
ACC had 5.
I think the ACC had 5.
Pac-12 had 4. And then the SEC 3 and Big 12 2, I guess is how.
Yeah, so despite, even though if we talk about the SEC, being the power conference, only 3 regionals there.
But if you took, like you said, if you took Miami away and would have put Kentucky there, then that would have been 4-4, and that would have looked a little bit more representative.
Now let's talk about the teams coming to College Station. Namely, Dayton, of course, was being his first opponent. If you're Childress, do you throw Waka in his first game to keep him on his normal rotation, or do you kind of roll the dice and do you save him for a second game against an Ole Miss or TCU?
I'd throw Waka because what's the difference? You got Stripling right behind him. So
yeah, I'm kind of
if there was no Stripling right behind him, I might think about that. But then at the same time, Dayton's strength is their hitting. I looked up a couple of their scores right after I saw the announcement, and they played Kentucky, and 2 of the big teams that they played were Kentucky and Miami. And I think I added it up. It was like 32-13, the composite scores of those 2 games. So, and who knows who they pitched? They might have pitched their 4th guy, which at Dayton probably isn't a very good pitcher.
Yeah.
But yeah, Coach talked about it. They have 2 or 3 guys with a lot of speed, and they have 2 or 3 guys with some power. I think they had 1 guy with 9 home runs, if I saw that correctly. So I think. But back to your question, with the staff that A&M has, no way. I'm going Waka, and I'm keeping it the exact same.
Yeah, and I think
thing
Rob kind of
is.
said that by saying he wasn't sure how big of an option that really was.
And hey,
I expect him to go with Waka.
If you're up 11-1 or 2, in the 6th inning, you can shut Waka down and then maybe have him to close a game or something. If push comes to shove at the end, kind of like what happened last year, with Arizona here.
Yeah, let's talk about the other 2 teams. What do you know about TCU and Ole Miss? What do you see coming in as a challenge, really, for A&M? And how do you think they match up against those teams?
Well, TCU they beat, obviously, and that was actually the turnarout of Mengden.
Yeah, Mengden's first start.
That was his first start, and that was where he came through. And I kind of wanted to ask Coach about that, like if he might keep him for the TCU game if that matchup ever came up late, especially. I really don't know much about. I just know Ole Miss. They played well because they were worried about, but they were also a bubble team. So I actually think looking at everyone talked about the Baylor haters talked about how easy a regional it was, and I don't want to say this is an easy regional, but I saw
it could have been worse.
It could have been a lot worse. I think if Arkansas would have been down here, which a lot of people thought about, or a UTA, which had a lot of good games against Big 12 teams this year. So I think, especially when you consider that A&M wasn't an 8 seed, you kind of would think that the NCAA would give the 8 seeded, the national seeds, the easier regionals. You think that the second team, the number 2 seed team, would be on down the line like at 24 or 25 rather than 17 or 18. So I think A&M's, I think they have nothing to complain about. Let's put it that way.
Now you're in Oklahoma City too, and you saw the same team that we all did. What are some of the concerns? How much of what we saw was just it's baseball, it can happen, and how much is it you think actually concerning going into the opening weekend of the NCAA's?
You mean what we saw last weekend in the Big 12? Well, it's funny, people talk about the hitting, but I thought they actually hit the ball pretty good. They hit the ball at people. They were a little unlucky with that. What concerned me really was that Walker and Stripling got hit. I mean, it wasn't like they got hit hard, but we're used to seeing them, just cruise through and give up a single run here and, 4 innings later give up another run, single run or something like that. But, I think they got hit a little bit more than I thought they would, and against teams that really aren't known for, Missouri if Kansas State would have done that, you would have gone, okay, well, that's Kansas State. I mean, they can hit, they just don't have any pitching. Whereas Missouri and Kansas weren't known as the best Big 12 hitting teams, but that would be my one concern. But and actually the main concern though is you got to get Martin back on that mound and feel like he knows what he's doing out there, because he's going into the postseason tournament having faced 3 guys and put all 3 of them on without throwing a strike, I think.
Yeah, I think part of what's concerning about seeing Waka and Stripling struggle a little bit last week was that their stuff looked pretty good, and especially Waka was hitting in the mid-90s on the radar gun and was still getting hit. I think that, if it was fatigue or something like that, that'd be one thing, but the fact that they had it.
Yeah, if Waka would have been throwing 92 and Stripling 89, then you kind of go, are they getting tired? But it was the opposite way. Of course, you can never trust totally
the ballpark radar.
Yeah, the ballpark radars are, you got to give or take 1, 2 or 3, and if you take 2 or 3, then Walker's back down to 93 or 2, and Stripling's at about 90, 91. So, and they both said they felt fine, and I think they did, and they, it wasn't, like I said earlier, they didn't get rocked. It was just, we've gotten so used to seeing, and we did almost see perfection out of Stripling there one game. But that when they do give up 3 in 6 innings or 7 innings or whatever it is, and because both games were pretty early, the runs were scored earlier in the first half, most of them, and so you just look at it that way. I don't know. I'd like to see them improve a little bit. Like I said, I think the hitting was better than most people thought. I think they hit right at people a little bit, and that ballpark's kind of strange in that, if you're a left-hander, how do you approach it? Because you're not going deep over the right field wall.
No, you can forget about it.
Yeah, and triples, like a Naquin, he could have thrown that. If he could have thrown a ball into that 415 gap in left center, he could have run all day.
Now, kind of closing questions. We kind of wrap this up. Do you think the postseason format, when you get out of your own conference and you play these teams that you haven't seen, do you think that favors pitchers, or do you think that favors hitters mostly?
Ooh, good question. I always think it favors pitchers, because it seems like in the majors a pitcher comes up and they always seem to do well, like their first outing or 2, until the hitters get a book on the pitcher where they like to go and stuff. So I think it favors the pitchers a little bit.
Yeah, because I think a team like, especially Missouri, who just for whatever reason has Waka on lock, and I think that's the thing.
Well, one reason is because Jameson coached him in the summer.
Exactly. And I think that going to help the pitchers a little bit here in the College Station region. But just kind of final question, what do you think about A&M in this NCAA tournament? Are they as good as last year's A&M team, and do you think they have a good chance of making it back to the College World Series?
Well, they did make the College World Series, but I still do think that this team's better in that its starting staff is deeper, and it's got a little bit more experience, especially in the infield. And the one thing that might not be as strong is the bullpen, especially at the back end of it. So it's pretty comparable to last year. I would say this team's a little bit better, which again kind of surprised me. I really thought that this team could have been a team that could have been
A national seed.
A national seed, yes.
And they were close for all we know.
Yeah, they were obviously
Yeah.
close. I mean, they were talked about. There was probably 3 or 4 teams that could have got that last one, and I'm sure A&M was at least on the bubble of getting that national seed. So, yeah, but I think that I felt all year long that this team is a better team than last year's team, just because, and especially when Mangdon started picking it up, because then all of a sudden you got your 4th seed, and especially going into the tournament. Now, last year when they had Stilson, for the whole, early in the season, or not early, but all the way through almost to the, to the postseason, then they might have been a better team just because Stilson's that much better than Pineda, even though Pineda's done well this year.
Yeah. All right, well, that's going to wrap it up. We're going to kind of do this again. If the Aggies get out of the regional and they head to probably Los Angeles, assuming UCLA gets out of their region, we'll do it again next time.
So it'll be Los Angeles or here.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you guys again soon.